Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed we do. A lot to get to. So the ceasefire in Gaza was back off. Now it may be back on. We're going to take you through the TikTok of exactly what happened and where we are now as best as we can figure it out. We're also going to be joined by Jasper Nathaniel. You guys may remember him. We've had him on the show a number of times. He's a journalist and activist. He's been covering the attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank. He himself was lured into a trap by the IDF, chased by murderous settlers, and then the U.S. Embassy said, even if you need our help, we're not going to help you. So he is going to join us to break down exactly what happened, how it connects to broader context of what's going on with Palestinians and to Palestinians. In addition, we've got more news in terms of Venezuela, more boats blown up, more international fallout, more indications that we are rapidly speeding towards a potential regime change war. John Bolton indicted, George Santos sentence commuted. A lot going on there. New revealing Epstein docs that Saagar is going to break down for us. And Shrikat Chakrabarti, who is the former AOC chief of staff and is now challenging Nancy Pelosi in her congressional seat, is also going to join us to break down his race and how he sees the future of the country and the future of the Democratic Party. So a lot of interesting stuff.
He's a smart guy. I've always enjoyed reading some of his takes, and I'm interested to hear some of what he has to say about that race. Thank you to everybody who's been supporting the show, BreakingPoints.com. We do want to give you an example of why we need your support. Let's go ahead and put Krystal's screenshot up here on the screen so you guys can all see. Krystal has been posting on TikTok, and you can see that multiple of her posts about Israel are now, quote, ineligible for recommendation. So everybody go follow Krystal. By the way, follow me as well. I have joined TikTok. I've given in
Saagar has
to the. I only have 350 followers though.
Just keep this up for a second though. It's kind of interesting. The Miriam Adelson one was literally the only Israel one that they allowed me to keep up. That Gavin Newsom one is literally just me throwing to the clip of Gavin Newsom being like, AIPAC, what's that? It's interesting.
That's
very
why
interesting.
It's wild.
Crazy. And so that one, and then two others that I did talking about the ceasefire deal, ineligible for recommendation. So you can see the new Zionist takeover of TikTok has taken hold, and it is just a reminder of how vulnerable we are. We rely on these big tech platforms, and it's not always a safe bet to do so. So that's why your support means a lot, because this is what we're dealing with. Crazy.
Look,
though.
We're alive today on YouTube. What I think we can all learn from this day, from the Spotify, from YouTube, no one's going to save you. If the government comes knocking on their door, or somebody does, this show, multiple other shows, if you're critical of Israel or the powers that be, we could be done in a day. The only thing that keeps us alive is all of you. So breakingpoints.com if you are able to help us out. Seriously, I mean, these are good reminders of just how quickly things can turn. So if you can't afford it, no worries. Please just hit subscribe on YouTube to our channel. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, please just send your favorite episode to a friend. The more organic growth we have, obviously it also helps in order to show people if there ever is some sort of censorship crackdown. Genuinely, you have no idea. And being in this business, this morning, for example, AWS had a complete meltdown on their servers. Multiple websites, services, and all these other things just crash. I mean, we live in a very, very centralized world of single points of failure. It would be only two podcast platforms, Apple and Spotify, before we're dead. It would be on video, it would be YouTube, and then the entire recommendation algorithm is taken away. So anyway, look, we're not just talking for real. We designed this business very intentionally to make sure that our subscribers are the one backbone that we can always rely on. So please, thank you very much if you can't support us. BreakingPoints.com. All right, let's go ahead and get to the Israel ceasefire and who the hell even knows what's going on there. It really is totally shocking, I think, whenever we break down everything that has happened with the lead up to the ceasefire. It also really vindicates a lot of the people who are like, hey, just hold on a second before we're all celebrating. How about this? We celebrate the release of the hostages, which actually did happen. The rest of it, wait and see.
Yeah, exactly. So on Saturday, I'm just going to take you through the timeline of what transpired and brought us to this present moment, which is rife with a lot of uncertainty, as it has been from the beginning. Let's go ahead and put A1 up on the screen. So Saturday at some point, we get this news from Barak Ravid, official stenographer of the U.S. government and the Israeli government. He says, according to the State Department, the U.S. has informed the guarantor nations of the Gaza peace agreement of credible reports indicating an imminent ceasefire violation by Hamas against the people of Gaza. This planned attack against Palestinian civilians would constitute a direct and grave violation of the ceasefire agreement and undermine the significant progress achieved through mediation efforts. The guarantors demand Hamas uphold its obligation under the ceasefire terms. Should Hamas proceed with this attack, measures will be taken to protect the people of Gaza and protect the integrity of the ceasefire. The U.S. and other guarantors remain resolute in our commitment to ensuring the safety of civilians, maintaining calm on the ground, and advancing peace and prosperity for the people of Gaza and the region as a whole. So anyone who's been covering this looks at that and is like, oh boy, here we go. They are giving Israel basically cover to violate the ceasefire agreement. You will also know, if you've been watching this closely, that Israel has been violating the ceasefire agreement effectively since that agreement went into effect. More on that in a moment. Then we see, let's put A2 up on the screen. There was some incident that occurred, okay? And initially there was a lot of confusion about who killed who and what exactly happened. We got some clarity on that. I'll get to that in a moment. But in response to this incident, Israel begins bombing Gaza in what they describe here as a major ceasefire violation. Heavy Israeli bombing rocked the Gaza Strip on Sunday, they write, killing at least 15 Palestinians in a major violation of the ceasefire. More than 100 airstrikes were reported in Rafah and Khan Yunis in the south, Jabalia in the north, and parts of central Gaza. Among the sites hit were a cafe, a mobile phone charging station, a group of journalists, and a house sheltering displaced people. The Israeli military said the strikes were in response to an alleged attack by Palestinians on its troops in southern Rafah involving a rocket-propelled grenade and sniper fire. Israel's Channel 12 furthermore said political leadership has also decided to halt the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza until further notice. So we have Israel bombing wild throughout the Strip, the south central part of the Strip and the northern part of the Strip, saying they're going to cut off all aid. Okay, that was, again, another key part of the ceasefire agreement was at least 600 trucks would be entering per day. And they said at this point, we're also not going to open the Rafah border crossing, which I don't think that they've opened to this point anyway. Go ahead and put A4 up on the screen because Ryan and actually also Saagar were able to get the news of what this incident actually was. So Ryan writes here, soon after the explosion in Rafah, I'm told by a source familiar, the White House and Pentagon knew that the incident that, again, the Israelis were using as a pretext to do an all-out, once again, assault on the Gaza Strip, that this was caused by an Israeli settler bulldozer running over an unexploded ordnance, contradicting Netanyahu's claim that Hamas had popped up from tunnels. After Netanyahu said he was blocking all aid from entering Gaza in response and unleashed a bombing campaign, the administration conveyed to Israel they know what happened. Netanyahu then announced he would reopen the crossings in a few hours. So, Saagar, the long and short of that is, again, their bulldozer ran over one of their unexploded ordnances. So they basically blew themselves up, claimed it was Hamas, and used that as a pretext to cut off all aid, collective punishment, wildly illegal, obviously, and brutal and cruel and contrary to the ceasefire agreement, and go back to all-out assault on the Gaza Strip. Now, the administration deserves credit here because they apparently came and said, no, we understand what happened. This was not Hamas. And you were going to, we're going to go back to the ceasefire. The ceasefire is going to be enforced. Now, they only get so much credit because Israel's already violated the ceasefire literally roughly 50 times. But as best we can tell, that is the chain of events. And it underscores how Israel wants to go back to the genocide. And this thing is incredibly, incredibly fragile. It requires constant vigilance from this administration to keep it even approximating being on the rails.
Which is the issue. That's the thing. Netanyahu, so Trump is in one of his moods where he wants peace, which is good. Listen, I'll take it. It's one of those. Apparently he berated Zelensky in a meeting for over 2.5 hours and said, listen, man, you're either going to lose or you're going to have to give up, and decided not to give him long-range missiles. That seems to be the mood that he's in on Friday. We'll see how it lasts until Sunday. But what the Israelis are banking on is eventually we'll get away with this. And I think they're right. I mean, it's one of those where consider the amount of management that it's going to take on the U.S. side to have to debunk every Israeli claim. Or like, for example, is every single time that the Israelis want to restart it, are we just going to have to put Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff on a plane, which they are right now, if anybody's wondering. They're left Miami and are on their way to Israel to try to solidify solidify the ceasefire. The amount of attention that this is going to take, not just from the low level, but from the very top of the administration, because the only person that can actually stop Netanyahu is Trump himself. So you have to elevate it through the interagency process, send it up to Trump. There's just no way. We know this White House. There's no way that they can stick to this for days and months and years on end. And this is the eventual end game. Meanwhile, I mean, should we all sit with this? They straight up lied, as usual, about this bulldozer. But here's the issue, is this time, I'm not exactly sure how the U.S. had like perfect intelligence, and they were immediately telling reporters like Reined, Kurt Mills, and others, they're like, this is bullshit. It didn't happen. What about when it's ambiguous? We have no idea.
Or what about when Hamas genuinely does, like, I mean, they are on a campaign of retribution. Like, we already saw Israel trying to use that as a reason to break the ceasefire.
I want to sit with that, because that was kind of the original parts of the ceasefire violation. If we look to the very top at some of the things that the State Department had said, they said, quote, a planned attack against Palestinian civilians would constitute a direct and grave violation of the ceasefire, which is incredibly ironic considering what the Israelis
have done to Palestinian civilians.
Let's sit with what Trump himself said, which Ryan and I covered on our show last Wednesday. Trump endorsed Hamas retribution. He said, I don't have a problem with it, to be honest with you, because they were killing, I mean, according to them, nobody really knows, but they were killing people who were either, quote, collaborators or people who killed children for food and sold it on the black market.
Yeah. I think Trump also just started,
no
like,
villains.
Gangs and was like, oh, of course you got to get after the gangs.
Get rid of them. I mean, listen, in the absence of law and order, somebody has to fill the void. So for Hamas, this gets to a much bigger thing, which my original take had been before the Israeli lie had been, who is going to govern Gaza? And when I say govern, I'm not even talking about the high-level political entity. True governance starts at the street level. If you were a looter and you sold food on the black market, well, somebody has to deal with you. Yeah. Right now, the only person is Hamas. Who are the troops that are going to enforce that? You said you want them to lay down their weapons. They have ruled that place for, what, 18, 19 years now, almost at this time. There is no police or other governed authority. So if the solution is de-Baathification, like we did in Iraq, we take all the weapons away, civil war, chaos, which is exactly what they're advocating for. They're like, Hamas, you have to unilaterally disarm. Meanwhile, the pro-Israel gangs get to keep their weapons. Well, what do you think is going to happen? Then they're going to go and they're going to kill everybody.
Right.
And then who's going to defend them? So of course they're going to come up, rise. So without a centralized governing authority and a literal occupation by the United States, the UAE, or Saudi Arabia, this is the end state, which we've all desired. And it's not one that I think that people are going to put up with, because in a lot of ways, it all starts now. Like the war, as horrible as it was, the actual next step starts today with the political civilian administration of the Gaza Strip. And so the demand that Hamas not carry out its law and order executions or whatever, has to be then replaced by some sort of central figure, some sort of central-backed legitimate authority, or you're going to have Iraq and Afghanistan all over again, which are already on the road to. And then same with the Israelis. They're legitimately, I think, going to be able to claim chaos and attacks on them because nobody can stop it. Nobody is going to say, oh, you don't carry out attacks on, no one's going to go and arrest somebody who's going to go in and try attack Israel, right? So the vacuum, the same terrorist vacuum that created ISIS, that created Al-Qaeda in Iraq, that create, the entire story of Afghanistan is about to play out again. I actually think it's going to be, frankly, just as disastrous, because you not only have a bombed out place, you have 1.7, 1.8 million people, whoever is left is alive, that are desperate for anything. People in those sorts of desperate straits, they'll go along with, the most radical party. If they can stop shooting and looting, that's how the Taliban rose to power in the 1990s. Right. So I see a lot of dangers. Right. I see a lot of dangers ahead inside of Gaza.
And it's just so clear. If you had any doubt that the Israelis didn't want to just find any excuse at any point to get back to all-out war, I think that should be completely dispelled. At first you had, this flap over, oh, they're not getting us the remains of the hostages quickly enough. Even though in the ceasefire deal, everyone understood this is going to be very difficult. And by the way, the Israelis are blocking any heavy equipment, earth-moving equipment to be able to dig out anything from the rubble. So how are you supposed to pull this off? So that's the first thing that they try. Oh, Hamas is violating the ceasefire in that way. Again, as an excuse so that they can get back to their all-out war. Then you have the, suddenly they care so much about Palestinian civilian life, and they're just appalled at what Hamas is doing in the streets and the campaign of retribution. Then you have whatever this thing was with the bulldozer, and it's really interesting to me too, Saagar, that the State Department had some sort of a warning of an imminent ceasefire violation. And then they use this bulldozer thing as a pretext where they just literally like blew themselves up with their own ordnance, unexploded ordnance, lie about it, get caught. And so, this administration has to come in and enforce. And what the Israelis do and what they have been doing, let's put A3 up on the screen. Again, this was before this bulldozer situation. The Israeli army had already committed 47 violations of the ceasefire, killing 38 people, wounding another 143. One of those instances, they killed 11 members of a Palestinian family, deadliest single violation of the ceasefire that took effect at that point 8 days ago. Among them were 7 children that were killed in that attack. So you know what they do. And they're doing the same thing in Lebanon. They see what they can get away with, and they keep pushing the envelope, And so they went a little too far with this bulldozer bullshit. They got checked a little bit, but they're going to keep trying, keep pushing. And that's why, forget about phase 2 and governance and reconstruction and all of that is so far off, and they are so far at odds from any shared vision between, the U.S., Palestinians, and Israel. But even just maintaining this very new ceasefire feels increasingly, I don't want to say impossible, but extraordinarily difficult.
It's look, I mean, I would say impossible in the long run, just considering U.S. policy with Israel. It just seems, frankly, like so difficult. I'll read you another quote just from yesterday, Israeli television from Ben Gvir. Quote, "Now we have received the hostages. We must return to war and open the gates of hell upon Gaza." Yeah. That's the National Security Advisor. Okay? Smotrich said what? He said, we will have Jewish settlement inside of Gaza. Let's sit with the reality of all this.
And how are they going to react when it's increasingly clear Hamas is just back in charge? Because who else is going to be in charge?
Which is
They're the only ones who have the capability to govern,
it's like a horseshoe moment with the Israeli right wing where they're like, but wait, we can't. The whole point of the war was to say Hamas is no longer in charge. And then for many of us to be like, yeah, that was an impossible goal. But they're like, no, but we have to continue the war. And so the fact that Hamas still has at least some political administration capability, will, democratic support to enforce something on the ground shows you already that the war itself was a failure. Again, it's impossible without occupation. We've tried this a million times throughout history. The Israelis have no interest in actual civilian administration of Gaza. They'd rather just them all leave. And so in the absence, then now what? The UAE, Saudi Arabia, the US would have to step up. I'm not for that at all. I don't think we should occupy, Israel's mess inside of Gaza. So what's going to happen? Just hectoring tweets from the State Department and threats of death from the Israelis, and just a constant mowing the lawn effect. Now, with Trump, himself, he's got these grand plans. So here was his most recent interview with Maria Bartiromo over on Fox News about his plan for Gaza. Let's take a listen.
Could be developed, and you said you wanted to develop it.
Well,
do you
not
have
me
plans for that?
Not me as an individual.
The U.S.
I liked it as like Freedom Place. You call it Freedom Place, and we would get all of the people that live there into decent homes throughout the region. If you look, Egypt has a lot of land. Jordan has a lot of land, right next door. A lot of countries have a lot of land. So I had an initial vision that we would get them, look at Gaza. I mean, there's nothing standing. The whole thing it's all rubble. So it's not too hard to top that.
So he says, Freedom Place, you could call it. Again, not possible. You need full-blown occupation. You need a U.S. administration of Japan, of Germany, and those are the only 2 successful ones. Not every recent experiment that we have done, it didn't work. The likely modal outcome in the Middle East is we destroy a regime, we decimate and immiserate the population, and then we have a long experiment where we try to impose something, and then eventually the most radical element inside of that society will probably rise to the top, very top.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Well, and as someone who's, opposed to immigration and really, makes a lot of his politics around that, he sure does like to create migration crises, know, to pushing millions of people, whoever remains in the Gaza Strip, out of Gaza. I mean, it's just, and the phase 2 of this, it's really not even worth bothering to talk about, to be honest with you, because it's so preposterous. It's Tony Blair and Trump's the head of the board, and no, Palestinians will be able to stay. But then here's the president again being like, no, they're going to leave. They're going to have great homes in other countries where, I don't know, they've got room in Egypt, surely. Egypt has its own political issue, major political issues, by the way, major economic issues. Like, they're not super keen on absorbing a population that is destitute and completely and thoroughly traumatized. Like, every single individual in Gaza is going to need so much care and assistance to get them back to being able to function in society. I mean, it's just insane what's been done to these people. You can't even wrap your head around it, let alone the children, the medical care, you know, the lack of nutrition, the amputations. And so not only is it, you know, a difficult situation when you have a migration crisis anyway, but then you have this incredibly traumatized, like, population suffering from all these healthcare. Anyway, the whole thing is insane. Like, there's no contemplating of what this could look like in any way that's going to be livable for Palestinians, let alone just. The Israelis have no interest in doing anything other than complete war and ethnic cleansing until there's nothing left, because at this point, that's what they see as a final solution. Like, that is on the table, and not just for far-right total psychos. That has become a far more acceptable endpoint for a broad swath of the Israeli population. And that's what this administration, like, they will have to be so focused and committed and willing to use all the levers that they have to force some sort of an outcome on the Israelis. And yeah, it's hard to imagine.
It's theoretically possible. I don't personally see it as, I mean, look at Ukraine. Zelensky comes to the Oval. We berate him. It looks like the war is going to end. We finally get Putin summit. Then afterwards, we have this grand meeting of all the Europeans. Nothing comes of it.
Nothing happens.
Absolutely nothing changes on the battlefield. Trump gets mad at Putin, says, I'm going to give you the Ukrainians long-range missiles. So that's where we're ending up. He actually even said, maybe Ukraine can take back all of Crimea. So that's where we were. Then Ukraine, Zelensky comes to Washington, and this is all from behind the scenes reporting. We're not exactly sure. Probably most of it leaked from the Ukrainian side. Trump berates him for 2 hours, has a phone call with Putin, and says, why don't you just take all of Putin's terms? So we're back. I mean, I don't know which way we went. Now imagine being on the Israel side, right? If you're the Hamas people, yeah, you took the deal, this hostages are gone, but the incentive side on Israel is now, they don't even have to care to pretend about the hostages anymore. And the ceasefire has been, what, like 10 days?
Yeah.
And they've tried to break it 3 times. Seriously tried to break it 3 times. How is this going to last for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10? I mean,
and Israel still controls 53% of the Gaza Strip.
So, and then, you have the civilian problem that I talked about with literal, like, law enforcement. And yes, it's great that aid is going to be there. Eventually, somebody's going to beat somebody up for something. Who's going to do anything about that? You're going to have cops? Like, no, you're going to call somebody, and then you're going to have rise of gang violence. Like, that's what happens in these scenarios. Unfortunately, we've played it over and over and over again. You don't even have to be all that, intelligent to see where things are going. So anyway, all right, speaking of gang violence, the Jasper Nathaniel, American journalist, has been in the West Bank, ruthlessly attacked by these Jewish settlers inside of the West Bank, basically told to fend for himself by the United States Embassy. So let's go ahead.
Off by the United States Embassy, to be honest.
Let's speak to him.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.